In this lesson, for the last video of the section, we're going to talk about my ways to implement the persistent session. And for the first slide, we're going to have a look at the good requirements before implementation. For the requirements, the first thing I need to mention is we need to have a secure data, and security is one of the most important aspects we need to have a look at. Which means we're going to store the sessions into the database. I'm going to explain why we need to do that. The second point I want to mention is persistent cookies even after browser is closed. We need to have a persistent cookie after browser is closed. And with this sessions, having a persistent cookie is not possible. So we need to store this session into a database and use it as a token and store it to the cookie and use these cookies. And I'm going to even dig down a little bit more to show you why we need to do that. And the third point is login automatically should be an optional, not something mandatory. So we need to have like a checkbox or something in a HTML form when user logs in, and we need to ask them whether they want to be automatically logged in next time when they open their browsers or not. Sessions should be accessible from various devices, and users should be able to log out. So you need all of this. And how are we going to store the data? To store the data should be stored in a database, as I said in the previous slide. And one of the things that PHP had before version 5.3 was SQLite could be registered to handle this session. And the problem is SQLite was removed from PHP 5.4, so it is not the default thing to use. And PHP has a good reason to explain you why they removed this, and I'm going to show you. But SQL has no support for session handling with SQLite 3, and also SQLite files are not password protected. So these are very good reasons why SQLite is not really suitable for this job. And users and SQLite 3 use different, instead of SQLite 3, we can use different databases such as MySQL. And the good thing is, if you learn MySQL and you know the syntax, you know that mostly SQL syntaxes are pretty similar to each other. So even though if you use MySQL, you can use MariaDB to implement whatever you are having into that database. So how to increase session lifetime? To increase the session lifetime, we need to increase the value of session.cookie_lifetime. And we also need to increase the session.gc max lifetime. All of these configurations are available inside the php.ini, and I showed you previously how to modify these settings either by .htaccess, .user.ini, or php.ini, and etc. And the very important point in this slide is you do not want to use the same session ID for a long period. And PHP has a really good explanation in its documentation, and I'll quote it in the next slide that I'm going to show you. So in the PHP documentation, if you go to this address, it says developers must not use long life session ID for auto login, as it's increased risk of stolen sessions. Auto login should be implemented by developers. Use one-time hash key as an auto login key using cookies. So this documentation really guide you to how to store sessions, even if you want to use it into the database or wherever you want to use it in the cookie. So by looking at those lines of sentence, you could guess what we are going to do. But to having a persistent session or a stable sessions, we're going to do a few stages. We're going to go through the few stages. First, we're going to create a new session when users logs in. So this is really easy. Session_start. Then we're going to regenerate the session ID when authenticated. So whenever user is going to authenticate, we're going to regenerate the session ID. even though we have the session ID already, and PHP said don't use the session ID for a long time of period. So that's why we're going to regenerate the session ID whenever user authenticates. So even though they authenticated already, they want to authenticate it again or open up their browser, we're going to regenerate the session ID again. And then the next, we're going to save the session data and ID into the database. So session data and ID are both are going to be saved into a database. And the reason is database is password protected, but sessions can be hijacked. So this is one of the points that I wanted to mention about sessions and why we are storing them into the database. The next, if we're going to have an option called remembered. So if the option remembered is selected, we're going to generate a one-time use token to identify the users on return. So we have, you probably have seen it, even if you log into your Facebook account, you have username and password, and then you have an option called remember me or remembered. So if it's selected, we're going to have like a one-time use token to identify the user on return. So where are we going to store this token? We're going to store this token as a cookie in the user's browser. So this token is stored in the user's browser. We're going to use all of the power of sessions and cookie and database together to have our system really, really secure. That's what I intend to do in this course. And then we're going to use this cookie, and this cookie will be different from session ID. So it's not the session ID, it's a one-time use token, and it's going to be always changing when users come to this account or her account. So for having a persistent session, again, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to save the session date and users data into the database. So we're going to save the token, date, and users data. Next, we're going to use when users return, any user return, system will check the token stored in a user's browser. So whenever they return, open up their browsers, first thing the system is going to do is going to check the token. So then we're going to have a conditional. If the token is valid, or if it's set and valid, users data will be stored into a new session. It's not going to be the same session, and we're going to have a new session. And then we're going to mark the session as it's been used and generate the new one. So the previous cookie is being used, we're going to generate the new one. This is really important stage that you want to have a look at, and I'm going to even emphasize more about these two steps. And if there is no token detected, the user will be asked to log in, or in the other word, redirected to the back page, or log out and destroy the session. We're going to ask them to log in. For the other devices, when the user is logged in manually, we're going to check the user's key, and if user has already session data in the database, we're going to import a new session. And then we're going to provide option to log out of current session or off. So all of these are for other devices, and I went to them really fast because there's going to be a section to talk about other devices. So for the security warning for the last slide, I want to mention about a few points. The first point is, if token is presented twice, which means your session is hijacked, because when the session is hijacked, your token will be used twice. So that's why we assume that the session is hijacked. You're going to delete all the user's tokens, and by deleting the token, user is going to redirect it to the login page, and then we're going to ask them to log in again. That's the first thing. And then if requirement for manual re-authentication for sensitive pages, so you're going to have maybe if you want to change your password, sometimes for all of those pages for password changing or maybe username changing, those sensitive pages, that's what I call them, sensitive pages. We're going to ask them to re-authenticate again, so it's not going to be the same pages they see. So whenever they want to change the password, we're going to record this re-authentication, or maybe we're going to ask them to insert the old password again. And then we're going to, this is really important, even after finishing this course, it's worth to mention and to remember this. Using a connection over SSL, TSL in the production configuration. I strongly recommend you to use this SSL, TSL in production configuration. We skip this stage, but it's really, really important to use this in the production configuration.